As we get into this portion of our service, I want you to just think, let's go back one more time to Isaiah chapter 7 and verse 14. Isaiah chapter 7 and verse 14. Therefore, the Lord himself will give you a sign. Behold, a virgin shall conceive and bear a son, and shall call his name Emmanuel. Being interpreted is God with us. Now, this is the time of year that a lot of the attention is brought to the birth of our Savior, and we know the story of the Christ child. And I don't know whether you actually celebrate Christmas or whether you don't. But I think that it's something that we should display on a daily basis throughout the year, the Christmas spirit. Because unfortunately, and my family gets after me quite a little bit, because whenever I'm sitting there, and pardon my expression, I know it's close to Christmas, but whenever I'm sitting there and I'm talking to that idiot box that's talking to me, I talk back to it. And every now and then, one of my kids will run through and they'll say, "Has it answered you yet?" Well, no, it hasn't answered me yet. If it does, I'll probably throw it out. But I heard a story, because unfortunately, I feel that there's people out there in the world that uses this time of year to rip us off. Unfortunately. But I heard a story the other day, and you may have heard it. The story was actually set in World War II. And the title of the story was, "If You're Missing Baby Jesus, Call 7162. In the depth of a bitterly cold December, I don't do this a lot, but to get the impact of the story, I'm going to basically do some reading. So bear with me a little bit. In the depth of a bitterly cold December, my mother decided it simply wouldn't do to go through the holidays without a nativity set. It was 1943 in a small town in North Dakota. My father worked for an oil company during my growing up years, and we had moved around to several different parts of the state with his job. At some point between one move and another, we lost our family's little manger scene. Now, also in this story, there's going to be an individual that some people would call Scrooge. Happily, Mother found another at our local 5 and dime. It was only $3.99. When my brother and I helped her unpack the set, however, we found 2 figurines of baby Jesus. Mother frowned. Someone must have packed this wrong. Counting out the pieces, we have 1 Joseph, 1 Mary, 3 wise men, 3 shepherds, 2 lambs, a donkey, a cow, an angel, and 2 babies. Oh, dear me. I suppose some set down at the store is missing a baby Jesus. Hey, that's great, Mom, my brother said with a laugh. Now we have twins. Mother wouldn't have a bit of it. You two run right back down to the store and tell the manager that we have an extra Jesus. Ah, Mom. Go on with you now. Tell him to put a sign on the remaining boxes saying that if a set is missing a baby Jesus, call 7162. She smiled. I'll give you each a penny for some candy, and don't forget your mufflers. It's freezing cold out there. The manager copied down my mother's message, and sure enough, the next time we were in the store, we saw his cardboard sign. If you're missing baby Jesus, call 7162. All week long, we waited for the call to come. Surely, we thought, someone was missing that important figurine. What was a nativity set without the main attraction? Each time the phone rang, my mother would say, I'll bet that's about Jesus. But it never was. With increasing exasperation, my father tried to explain that the figurine could be missing from any set anywhere. Minot, Fargo, even Walla Walla, Washington. For that matter, after all, packing errors occurred all the time. He suggested we just put the extra Jesus back in the box and forget about it. Back in the box, I wailed. What a terrible thing to do to the baby Jesus. And on Christmas, too. Someone will surely call, my mother reasoned. We'll just keep the babies together in the manger until we find the owner. That made my brother and me happy. It was special to look into that little manger and see two Christ children side by side, gazing up into the adorning eyes of Mary. And was that a surprised look on Joseph's face? But the days went by and no one called. When we still hadn't heard from anyone by 5 o'clock on Christmas Eve, my mother insisted that Daddy just run down to the store to see if there were any sets left. You can see them right through the window over the counter, she said. If they're all gone, I'll know someone is bound to call tonight. Run down to the store? My father thundered. Ethel, it's 15 below out there. Oh, Daddy, I said, we'll go with you, won't we, Tommy? Tommy nodded vigorously. We'll bundle up good and we can look at all the decorations on the way. My father blew out a long sigh, headed for the front closet. I can't believe I'm doing this. He muttered, every time the phone rings, everybody yells at me to tell if it's about Jesus. And now I'm going off on the coldest night of the year to peek in some store window to see if he's there or not there. Daddy muttered all the way down the block. Do you see who I was talking about earlier? In the cold, still air, while my brother and I raced each other to the store, the streets were empty and silent. But behind each lighted window, we knew the families were gathering around Christmas trees, manger scenes and fireplaces, and tables laden with tasty holiday treats. I was the first to reach the store window. Colored lights flickered along the edges of its frosty panes. Pushing my nose up against the glass, I peered into the darkened store. "They're all gone, Daddy." Every set was sold. "Hooray!" Brother cheered, catching up with me. "The mystery will be solved tonight." My father, who had seen no logical reason to run, remained some yards behind us. When he heard our tidings, he turned on his heels and started for home. Inside the house once more, we were surprised to see only one baby Jesus. Where was the twin? For that matter, where was Mother? Had she vanished too? Daddy was unperturbed. Someone must have called, he reasoned, pulling off his boots. She must have gone out to deliver the figurine. You kids get busy stringing those popcorn strands for the tree, and I'll wrap your mother's present. We had almost completed one strand when the phone rang. "Gene," my father called, "tell 'em we already found a home for Jesus." My brother gave me a quick, eager look. Our mystery would be solved at last. But the telephone call didn't solve any mystery at all. It created a bigger one. It was my mother on the phone, with instructions for us to come to 205 Chestnut Street immediately and to bring 3 blankets, a box of cookies, and some milk. My father was incredulous. "I can't believe this." Retrieving his boots for the second time that evening, "Now what has she got us into?" He pined, 205 Chestnut. "Why, that's 8 blocks away. Wrap that milk up good in the blankets or it'll turn to ice by the time we get there. Why can't we just get on with Christmas? It's probably 20 below out there now, and the wind's picking up. Of all the crazy things to do on a night like this." Tommy and I didn't mind at all. It was Christmas Eve. We were in the middle of an adventure. We sang carols at the top of our lungs all the way to Chestnut Street. And our father, carrying his bundle of blankets, milk, and cookies, looked for all the world like St. Nicholas with his arms full of goodies. My brother called back to him, "Hey, Dad, let's pretend we're looking for a place to stay just like Joseph and Mary." Father said, "Let's pretend we're in Bethlehem where it's probably 65 degrees in the shade right now." The house at 205 Chestnut turned out to be the darkest one on the block. One tiny light burned in the living room, And the moment we set foot on the front porch steps, my mother opened the door and shouted, "They're here! They're here. Oh, thank God you got here, Ray. You kids take those blankets into the living room and wrap up the little ones on the couch. I'll take the milk and cookies." Ethel, would you mind telling me what's going on here? My father huffed. "We've just hiked through sub-zero weather with the wind in our faces all the way." "Never mind that now," my mother interrupted. "There's no heat in this house, and this young mother doesn't know what to do. Her husband walked out on her. Those poor little children will have a very bleak Christmas, so don't you complain." I told her that you could fix that oil furnace in just a jiffy. Well, that stopped my father right in his tracks. My mother strode off to the kitchen to warm the milk while my brother and I wrapped up the 5 little children who huddled together on the couch. The distraught young mother, wringing her hands, explained to my father that her husband had run off, taking bedding, clothing, and almost every piece of furniture. But she had been doing all right, she explained, until the furnace broke down. "I've been doing washing and ironing for folks, cleaning the 5 and dime," she said. I saw your number every day there. On those boxes on the counter. Then when the furnace went out, that number kept going through my mind. 7162. 7162. Said on the box that if a person was missing Jesus, they could call you. That's how I know you was good Christian people, willing to help folks. I figured that maybe you'd help me too. So I stopped at the grocery store tonight and I called your missus. I'm not missing Jesus, mister, because I surely love the Lord, but I am missing heat. Me and the kids ain't got no bedding, no warm clothes. I got a few Christmas toys for them, but I got no money to fix that furnace. It's okay, my father said. You called the right number. Now let's see here. You've got a little oil burner there in the dining room. Shouldn't be too hard to fix, probably just a clogged flue. I'll look it over, see what it needs. My mother came into the living room carrying a plate of cookies, a tray of cups with warm milk. As she set the cups down on the coffee table, I noticed the figurine of the baby Jesus, our twin, lying in the center of the table. There was no Mary or Joseph, no wise men, no shepherds, just Jesus. The children stared wide-eyed with wonder at the plate of cookies my mother set before them. One of the littlest ones woke up and crawled out from under the blanket. Seeing all the strangers in his house, his face puckered up and he began to cry. My mother swooped him up in her arms and began to sing to him. This is Christ the King, whom shepherds guard and angels sing. Mother crooned while the child wailed, Haste, haste, to bring him, Lord, the babe, the son of Mary. She went on singing. Oblivious to the child's cries, she danced the baby around the room until finally, in spite of himself, he settled down again. You hear that, Chester? The young woman said to another child. That nice lady is singing about the Lord Jesus. He ain't ever going to walk out on us. Why, he sent these people to us just to fix our furnace. And blankets. Now we got blankets too. Oh, we'll be warm tonight. Jesus saves. That's what he does. My father finished his work on the oil burner, wiped his hands on his muffler. I've got it going, ma'am, but you need more oil. I'll make a few calls tonight when I get home, and we'll get you some oil. Yes, sir, he said with a sudden smile. You called the right number. When Daddy figured the furnace was going strong once more, our family bundled up, made our way home under a clear, starry heaven. My father didn't say a thing about the cold weather. I could tell he was turning things around in his mind all the way home. As soon as he set foot inside the front door, he strode over to the telephone and dialed a number. Ed, this is Ray. How are you? Yes, Merry Christmas to you too. Say, Ed, we have kind of an unusual situation. I know you've got that pickup truck, and I was wondering if we could round up some of the boys and find a Christmas tree, and a couple of things for... The rest of the conversation was lost in a blur as my brother and I ran to our rooms and began pulling clothes out of our closets, toys off of our shelves. My mother checked through our belongings for sizes and selected some of the games she said might do. Then she added some of her own sweaters and slacks to our stack. It was a Christmas Eve like no other. Instead of going to bed in a snug, warm house, dreaming of a pile of presents to open on Christmas morning, we were up way past our bedtime, wrapping gifts for a little family we'd only just met. The men my father had called found oil for the furnace, bedding, 2 chairs, 3 lamps. They made 2 trips to 205 Chestnut before the night was done. On the second trip, Daddy let us go too, even though it must have been 30 below by now. My father let us ride in the back of the truck with our gifts stacked all around us. My brother's eyes danced in the starlight. Without saying anything, we both knew Christmas could never be the same after this. The extra Jesus in our home hadn't been ours to keep after all. He was for someone else, for a desperate family in a dark little house on Chestnut Street. Someone who needed Jesus as much as we did. And we got to take him there. Amen. Friends, like I said, I don't know what you think of Christmas. This is Christmas. And it should be a Christmas every day of our life. One little story. I miss my mother. But she was one that, I don't know, some of you older folks might have known about L.B. Price. There was an individual that they sold household items, and they went door to door. They had their cars full of household items, blankets, pillows. And each one of us children, as we got married, my mother had bought a family Bible from L.B. Price. And each week, as L.B. Price lady, it was a lady that came around to the house every week. And every week, whatever my mother purchased, whether it was a Bible, whether it was a blanket, whether it was a quilt, whether it was whatever, she paid $2 a week until it was paid for before she would buy anything else. And she had, by this time, accumulated probably, 3 or 4 new blankets. And the family had a burnout. I don't know when it was. I don't even know it was close to Christmas or not. But this thought was in my mind. She took those new blankets, sent them to that family. And someone asked the question, why did you give those new blankets? Why didn't you go take the ones off of the bed? They were good. They weren't tattered and torn and ripped up and everything. They were decent blankets. Why didn't you take those and then use your new ones? If I don't want to use the ones I've got, why would I give them to anyone else? Friends, like I said, I don't know what you think of Christmas. I'm not a big Christmas fan, but I am a big fan of the spirit of Christmas. And I certainly hope that if somebody is missing the baby Jesus, they'll call you. Amen. Let's sing our closing song. Abide with me. Hymn number 50. I think the eventide of